There were times I'd be taking in almost 2 large pizzas right before bed, and one time, I woke up as my brother did, and who didn't make it, and I was literally, we're talking honestly here, I was, vomiting in the middle of the night, and it of course went down my airway, and I was asphyxiating myself, and I had to, I was literally stuck in this apartment at 3 in the morning, and thinking to myself, I'm going to die. And I remember why I realized I wasn't before I ran about probably 15 miles an hour backwards into a wall to self-Heimlich and finally broke loose. Was I didn't see visions of my past. I saw visions of the future, which is a Detroit newspaper saying, nutrition doctor dies with pizza boxes around him.
Where does the truth about health and wellness lie in a world flooded with misinformation and quick fixes? And what happens when a doctor confronts the dangerous myths head on, even when it means challenging the status quo? Dr. Rak here, and welcome back to The Health Feast. On this episode, Po and I are honored to welcome Dr. Tom Rifai. Tom is a pioneering voice in the field of preventative medicine and lifestyle medicine, and I would say a relentless truth teller in the fight against misinformation. Dr. Tom Rifai is the founder and CEO of Reality Meets Science, a company that champions evidence-based lifestyle medicine programs designed to transform lives. With over 20,000 hours of clinical experience, Dr. Rifai's insights are as profound as they are practical. And I would say he is one of our leading figures in the world of preventative and lifestyle medicine. What sets Tom apart isn't just his expertise, it's his courage to speak up against misinformation that, quite frankly, is plaguing our health space today. In our conversation today, we dive deep into Tom's personal and professional journey. We explore the various areas of his Flex 5 lifestyle system, which is Tom's methodology that empowers individuals to achieve healthy longevity through sustainable behavior changes. The Flex 5 system really focuses on 5 key areas: psychology, nutrition, physical activity, environments, and accountability. And we have the opportunity to touch on various aspects of these areas during our conversation. Tom also opens up about his battle with binge eating disorder, a disorder that also tragically took the life of his brother. He shares the struggle that he's faced and overcome and how this experience fuels his current mission. Tom's no-nonsense approach to health is a breath of fresh air in a world where sensationalized and often harmful trends dominate the discourse. He shares his thoughts on the dangers of diet fads like the carnivore diet and the ketogenic diet, and why they do more harm than good. We also discuss the importance of understanding your why in your health journey and how self-love and self-respect are foundational to any successful wellness journey. So, whether you're on a walk, maybe you're on your commute home, or maybe you're just waking up for the day, this episode is the perfect companion. Prepare to be informed, inspired, and challenged as you listen to this powerful conversation with Dr. Tom Rifai. So let's do the show. Welcome back to the Health Feast. Hi, Tom Rifai. It's such a privilege to have you here on the Health Feast.
Oh, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And Tom, meet Po. Po, meet Tom.
Po, pleasure to meet you, man.
Good to meet you, Tom.
Thank you.
So, Tom, I was just telling Po actually a little bit about how I know you. I know you mostly through social media, I would say, because you're pretty active. Would you agree? You're pretty active on social media.
I think you have to kind of, it's a double-edged sword, but you have to scale to people. And right now, social media is one of the best ways to do it. The answer is yes.
Yeah. So what was I saying? Poe, I was telling you that Tom is a truth teller.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's never afraid to. One, what I appreciate a lot about you, Tom, is you're never afraid to admit when you don't know something. You're very curious and you admit when you don't know what you don't know. And when other people talk about things that they don't know in a way where they act like they know, you call them out. And that's just very refreshing, actually. I think we're in this post-truth world where a lot of people want to say what they believe is the truth, and you're like, no, but that's not actually what decades of research say. So anyway, I wanted to mention that, and also just welcome you again, and excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My concern is driven by the experience I've had clinically where I've had so many conversations with patients and coaching clients about, oh, I heard about this or that, and
Mm,
how much energy it takes to redirect. And you almost have to stamp out these fires ahead of time because it's not only that I don't want to have to go through an extra 5 minutes of explaining something, it's that I think there can be real harm done by misinformation, either even if it's benign by virtue of distracting from what is worth more of your bandwidth's time versus some things that are actually just untoward, directly a
mm.
risk. And at least having people realize that there's another thought. You can't. I try to emphasize to everyone I coach, and I'm a physician for, is that I'm a DOC. I'm not God. I can't control everything here, but I got to do my best.
Well, let take us back a little bit. Like, how did you? Now you're sort of a leader for many years in the lifestyle medicine space. But how did that come to be? Like, how did you even get? I was telling Poe, I was like, he was like the OG lifestyle medicine doc. Like, he was doing it before this was even a thing.
Well, yeah, okay. No, I appreciate that. I think it's definitely been before the American College of Lifestyle Medicine was formed. I graduated residency in 2003 and went right into multidisciplinary intensive lifestyle programming, leveraging my training in internal medicine and the fortune I had to have a medical school at Wayne State in Detroit that actually cared about nutrition, and then also a residency at William Beaumont, what's now called William Beaumont University Hospital, bigger than Mass General, over 1,000 beds, and had a really impressive nutrition and preventive medicine program with psychologists and exercise physiologists and dietitians. And at the time was underwater weighing. We hadn't gotten into DEXA scanning yet for body comp, but really a great lifestyle, nutrition, internal medicine combined residency. It was great. But before that, I was admittedly inspired by the likes of Jack LaLanne, who we know just won a posthumous Lifetime
Mm,
Achievement Award, Nathan Pritikin, who I think saved my life because I had an endocrinologist tell me when I was over 200 pounds at 19 about my fatty liver. And, he just said you need to eat low fat. And I'm like, what does low fat mean? So I went to a local mall where they had a lot of different ethnicities, a bunch of different food cafes. And one was a Lebanese place called Anita's. And it said right there, Pritikin, low fat, no salt menu. And I said, oh, Pritikin, what? And I asked Virginia, who was the lady who just passed, God rest her soul. Pritikin, like, where is that? Is that a city in Europe? And she laughed. She laughed in my face, and that's funny. No, no, Pritikin is a man, and he wrote a book. And considering how often you're coming here paying us for this, you probably should read the book and and learn about Pritikin yourself. And then I learned about Nathan Pritikin, and while I might not ascribe 100% that direction, directionally, I really appreciate what Nathan did. And as a non-physician who hired physicians and who reversed his own heart disease, started a whole program that still to this day exists, and that I ended up becoming the associate medical director of and spent 10 years on the science advisory committee for. So I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm an OG, maybe I'm a Memorex or whatever the term is, a
yeah,
wannabe,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Right.
thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
I heard a lot of things there that I wanted to delve into a little bit. One was you said when you were 19, you were dealing with weight issues. Is that right? And then you kind of got some counseling.
Yeah, well, yes, I some of my history goes back to realizing my father, who had type 2, really aggressive type 2 diabetes, surgeon, beautiful man in terms of many ways, but not necessarily in terms of lifestyle. He was the guy that would skip breakfast, take me to McDonald's after rounds, inhale the whole fries on the tray while I was sitting at the counter waiting for the burger. And when the burger hit the tray, ordered another fry. So I would say that he had binge eating, but without the disorder because he had no guilt over it. But I realized that in retrospect that with the multiple divorces I went through and so forth, I learned to be a comfort food. That was my tool for dealing with it, along with probably something far less untoward. I'm a big Kiss fan, so Kiss and Star Wars were my escape. But that's another story. That being said, I really started to learn just seeing my dad inject insulin. I'm like, there's something not right here, and somehow I gravitated towards an interest in nutrition and lifestyle, but not for medicine because my mother, also a physician, both my parents came from Syria as immigrants in 1966, and I was born in 1968 here. And she would just inculcate me. I mean, since I was 2 or 3, and she would whisper in my ear, "All doctors are
Mm.
crazy. Don't be a doctor." And I'm like, "Oh, so go to Hollywood, be a baseball player. You're in America now." And so I never even thought I would go into medicine. Not even thought about it. But through all the trials and tribulations with the weight, I saw a psychologist, 14, amazing man. I still stay in touch with him to this day. Made me want to become a psychologist. I said, that's what I want to be. I said, going for my PsyD. I'm at Boston at a graduate records examination, a kind of a dating service. You go to one program table, another program table, see which one's right for you. And had my first panic attack. Ironically, I'm trying to be a psychologist. I'm having a panic attack going there. I don't want to do this. There's something wrong. Call dad. Dad, I don't know what's going on here. Tom, it's okay. Take your time. I went to nutrition for a term. I said, gosh, I love this here. We didn't have semesters at the time. We had 10 weeks terms still at Michigan State at that time where I went to undergrad. It was great, but I'm like, not quite. Then I went into exercise science. And this is where I had the epiphany because in exercise science, we were allowed to go in the Michigan State cadaver lab. You only could go in the cadaver lab if you were a master's in anatomical art, a medical student, or exercise science undergrad. And all we did were primary moving actions, right? Like muscle and bone, kind of boring stuff and preparing for the practical. And about 6 or 7 medical students come in with, I presume, a pathologist, walk in the door, and behind this like curtain, I could hear everything they were saying, this divider, which didn't divide anything, and went right to a table. I couldn't believe it. Right from the beginning, go right to the table of hearts, pick up this heart, this big heart with cardiomegaly. Clearly had a nodular left anterior descending artery, which means it had a bunch of cholesterol plaques in it. And the pathologist, I presume, said, "Look at this. This is atherosclerosis. This is the biggest killer in the world. This patient didn't exercise, didn't eat well, and was stressed out."
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
paraphrasing, but almost exactly in one sentence, took psychology, nutrition, and physical activity. And I said, what the that's what I need to be doing. I need to be a
Mm.
doctor. Why am I? Oh,
Mm.
mom. Oh, she's going to kill me. Walk out into the bench in the area, in where the benches are, where the chalkboard is, and outside of the formaldehyde saturated area, and said, "I'm going to call mom. I'm going to get ready to get chewed out." Ding, ring, ring. Hi, mom. I know you're. Well, let me just tell it to you, mom. I think I'm going to go to medical school. Well, that's great. Who? You sound like my mother, but who are you? What do you? Oh, well, we didn't push you into it. Really? I mean, because I just forgot after the years of being a kid. She stopped saying all doctors are crazy, but it was already embedded in my head. And so the issue is in the Middle East, you kind of, if you're in the top 3 in your class, you got 3 choices. You can go to medical school or medical school or medical school. She wanted to go into fashion. And they're like, oh, fashion, that sounds great. Medical school, wonderful. No, I want to go into fashion. No, medical school sounds great. So she kind of felt forced into it and wanted the American version
Mm.
of freedom, to be, and yet she removed that freedom from me in a way. So, but
Mm.
anyway, that was my path to medicine. And right from my application, you could see nutrition and preventive medicine. There wasn't lifestyle medicine at the time. Did my residency, realized, man, in primary care, it's really hard to do this. You got these 7-minute visits. Let me just go right into
Right.
what we call lifestyle medicine, what we call then nutrition and preventive medicine, which became really lifestyle medicine. Yeah, I took my boards in nutrition and internal medicine, and I think 1 month after my medicine boards, I took the nutrition boards. Didn't require a fellowship at the time. Spent a couple terms on the board of directors of the National Board of Physician Nutrition Specialists. Uh, was the president for a short bit, and then really discovered lifestyle medicine. At the time, too, there was the obesity boards, and I was actually a question writer for the inaugural obesity certification. but when I thought about it, did I want to do obesity, or nutrition was more comprehensive? I'd want to talk about osteoporosis and diabetes and blood pressure and lipids, not just weight. And then when lifestyle came around, I said, well, that's actually even better. I don't want to just be nutrition either. I want to know the whole psychology and everything else. So there's the evolution towards lifestyle medicine. And all prior to that, there was Pritikin. I got involved in competitive bodybuilding, and I used a Pritikin approach. I mean, people were all wondering how to cut the water down, and they were dehydrating themselves. I'm like, how about you just cut your salt? And it's not that hard. You could stop your drinking maybe a couple hours before you go on stage. You don't have to be dehydrating yourself for 48 hours and killing your kidneys. So I
Mm,
credit him with my doing something which I think, I wouldn't say stupid. I can't say I regret doing competitive bodybuilding, but there's a lot of things about it that destroy your joints and make you eat extreme. And I actually aggravated my binge
mm,
eating, but ended up with clean arteries because, I do have a very high lipoprotein little a, and yet still in my 50s, my
mm,
coronary calcium score is 0. My CIMT is less than
mm,
25th percentile. And I just had some arterial Dopplers that were totally clean. I actually had an echo to make sure my aortic valve, as you probably know, lipoprotein little a increases risk for aortic valve calcification and stenosis. And I give a lot of credit to one of the real OGs to me, which is Nathan.
that's right. Yeah.
What drives you, Mr. Tom? What's driving you? You seem like a very driven person, and I was just listening to you, man. Like, what's your why, and what gets you up in the morning? I'm curious to that.
Oh, I love that. I love the why question, because that is the first of two questions I'll ask anybody I coach or I'm a physician for is, what is your why? Why do you need to be healthy? Not that I want to get off
Yeah,
pills or avoid the knee replacement. That's like outer onion layer. Like, I mean, and you may not even know what
Mm,
it is. I'm
yeah,
not saying you guys, but I've had patients
yeah.
not really know. I've had patients even come back and say, I thought it was my kids like you, doc, because I'm going to be 56. I got to think about 56 in August, and I've got a 7 and a 9-year old. Obviously, those are my biggest whys right now, as I refuse to be frail in any way that I can control. And I wouldn't say particularly for my daughter, for my son too, although I'll say there's something about, me facing soon to be, 7 year, 16-year-old boyfriends and not being anything more than as vigorous as possible before they walk in the door, so they know someone is protecting this young lady. So those are, those are currently my biggest whys. But I've also got a why to help people. I talk about my why as my social media community. You were asking about that earlier, and to help people understand that, those of us even that are experts, we don't walk on water. Again, DOC, not God. And we all have issues, and we're all really a team together.
mm,
And I get inspiration and information from people in my social community. They're so smart, they'll teach me something. I'll look it up, and it's great. So that's my why, is really to help people as well as my kids. I cannot not say, my English teacher now hates me, that they aren't huge whys for me, and being as healthy as possible,
mm,
and setting it's such a tough world for kids, and with school foods and everything else, to set a non-judgmental standard for them. We never say good or bad food. I always make it very clear, no judgment based on color, ethnicity, gender, weight, all
mm,
of that stuff. All humans are magical miracles as far
mm,
as I'm concerned. And those are, my biggest whys. That's what drives me, man. Thank you for
mm,
asking.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna ask you, leading off of that, like, with kids being on social media or what's going on in social media, like, what if you were to look at like the trends of the different eating ways that are out right now, that is like the biggest misinformation that's being pushed by the biggest companies right now. In your opinion, what is the biggest one that you're like, man, people need to like be careful with that one? Because I know, based on my experience and my research, that the one, and I don't know if you want to do that or not, but I'm just curious to know, like, if you were to look at the like the landscape of all the different health trends, which one is just like, man, that's a dangerous one that people are subscribing to right now?
I mean, I guess I got to be honest with myself and say I have an answer. I'm just not sure if it'll change or if there's more to it and there's nuance. So I don't want to, simpleton this, but carnivore. I think that an area in which, you have these N of ones. There's a lady who's now 75 years old, and she's done carnivore her whole life. So yes, and I know some 100-year-olds that smoked, and I suppose if I
Right.
blindfolded 30 people to walk across I-75 during a busy time of day, two would make it across. But is it a good idea for them? That's these kind of lack of evidence-based ways to look at things. I think that's probably one of the ones that concerns me most. Keto, I have look, I'm a very individualized care person. I do believe that there are ways to kickstart a journey, and compared to
Mm,
what is happening on average in the United States, it's not that hard to do something of lower risk. And then if that gets somebody started, and we have many people that have started with meal replacements or keto and then transition to what I think on average is an ethnic agnostic form of plant predominant flexitarian. Now, if someone wants to be plant pure, I'll support it. For myself, I like the idea of some flexibility where it's plant predominant. And then, you guys probably know, you've looked at the food pyramid. We have a 5% fun zone. We literally call it the 5% fun zone at the pinnacle of the Flex 5 pyramid, where we say, look, anything goes. If it happens, dose is the poison. You don't have to recipe modify everything. Once in a while, just go out and enjoy with a moment of silence in full nirvana. So you can remember it, by the way, because if you're feeling guilty because it's a guilty
mm,
pleasure or a cheat day, now half your energy is thinking like, oh, I'm a bad person. So you're going to have twice as much to be
mm,
just as happy, and probably have to have it, twice as often because of that lack of full enjoyment. But at the same time, we don't try to pretend it's all about willpower. I think that the power, speaking of the five keys of environments and your home environment and how you set it up so that you're one ground zero, if you will, because you can't really control what's outside the door. And there are three levels of control, right? The things you can control, the things you can influence, and the things you cannot control. Don't worry too much about level three, because you're going to be a very unhappy person.
mm.
So before I got married, for instance, the first person I ever admitted I had binge eating disorder. I don't know if we've gotten into that yet, or if you want to discuss it, but I lost my youngest brother to binge eating disorder. And I'd actually make the case it was to fat shaming is the true root. But the first person I admitted I had binge eating disorder to was my wife. And I said, listen, before you marry me, you might want to know I can have any food in my life, but in my face is a different story. I'm not too good about, not going to explain whatever you want, the details about the nutrition behind a brownie or cheese. But if brownie and cheese are sitting in front of me, it's going down the gullet. So I don't also want to be told I can't ever have a bite of brownie or cheese. That's not going to work for me either. The best way for me is to not pretend, a wolf is a dog, and then pretend, then blame the wolf when the wolf bites me. It's just, so can't have cheese in the house, if you don't mind. She, of course, looked at me with her pretty eyes and wink, 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 and said, "You're a nutrition expert. You're telling me there's no cheese we can have in the house and reasonably healthy and can work as a middle ground?" And I had just left Detroit to come to Pritikin, and I said, one of the things I'm going to do is stop having cheese in the house. And here's this beautiful person with this magic power over me telling me I have to give up what I said is. And so I said, okay, and that's a true story. I said, you can do this. You take fat-free shredded cheddar from Kraft, which tastes like crap, and then you mix 2% sharp, not mild, got to be sharp, with it, because they don't make a 1%. And I always lament that. And I figured out this dilution is the solution thing, and you could do it with a lot of things. And I just kind of mix them together in a bowl and put them back in the Kraft Ziploc baggies. And she stopped me and said, wait, there are these new Ziplocs. They have a little white bar here. And look, one will write Tommy, and the other one will say Angela. And now you see everything is fixed. Everything's fine. And, it was the next day, maybe the day after, I don't know, but one of the two. And I'm brushing my teeth in the bathroom and in an apartment in the condo in Aventura, Florida, where Pritikin was. And I hear the egg whites hit the pan, and then I hear, "Hey, where did all the cheese go?" "Mhm. I don't know, honey.
Mm,
Where do you think it went? I was waiting for you from 4 or 5 o'clock
mm,
yesterday. You think a name on a bag is going to stop me?" And she's like, "You're not
mm,
kidding with this cheese thing." I'm like, "Nope. I tried to tell you."
mm.
But then we went to, so we got to agree that, okay, maybe not in the house. But then we went to a fundraiser for heart health at Don Shula's house. You might know Don Shula, the winningest, coach in Miami Dolphins history.
Yeah.
And he had this big block of whatever it was. I think it was Parmesan from Italy. And I told Angela, I said, listen, there's no one out on the terrace right now. I'm going to take that little plate. I'm going to shave a pyramid of that cheese. I'm going to go out. Don't tell anybody I'm there. I'm going to have a moment of silence, but I'm not going to buy a 50-pound block and put it on my kitchen island. I can't do that. So that's the way we've kind of found balance in the Flex 5, and
Mm,
where people don't feel like they're on a diet, and they're not having to fight willpower all the time, which is this muscle that gets fatigued. And as
mm.
people think they can grow, you can grow willpower a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, so that talk about binge eating, because I think I have a binge eating disorder too, and I think I'm a food addict, man. Like that's something that I'm been working on,
I'm
and
with you,
I'm glad
brother.
you brought it up because I kind of want to talk about like what's that experience been for you in your life? Like, did it originate from something? Like, why do you think that's something that's kind of you developed over your life?
Well, I think I appreciate you, man. I really think there's a lot more, and no disrespect to women. I think, of course, them too, but I think they're more honest, and I appreciate more men are coming out and being honest. I think it's very underreported, and you can call it whether it meets the technical definition of binge eating disorder or, binge eating that's under that threshold, but still a significant, whatever, emotional eating. It happens a lot. It is, I think it's rampant in far wider. So I appreciate you saying that. I think it's rooted in my father. My father and my mom to some degree, if I think about it, but she wasn't really so much a binge eater as a real. And by the way, when I say crap, remember it's an acronym: CRRAHP, calorie rich, refined, and highly processed. It's not a pejorative. I'm just using it happens to sound like crap, but not the crap you're thinking of. So she really liked crap. She had pound boxes of Kit Kats everywhere. I became a PhD in the anatomy of a Kit Kat thanks to my mom. Take the top layer off and the chocolate around the side and get the
Yeah,
wafer out in the middle. And so but that wasn't so much the same
dude.
volume thing as my dad, who would just eat large volumes, and it just
Mm.
comforted himself with food. He had his own issues of divorce and everything else when he was a kid. So somewhere in there was how I learned to comfort myself with food. And then it got so, bad. Let's face it, medicine is a stressful place, and I had, been there were times I'd be taking in almost two large pizzas right before bed. And one time, I woke up as my brother did and who didn't make it. And I was literally, we're talking honestly here, I was, vomiting in the middle of the night. And it, of course, went down my airway, and I was asphyxiating myself. And I had to, I was literally stuck in this apartment at 3 in the
Wow.
morning and thinking to myself, I'm going to die. And I remember why I realized I wasn't before I ran about probably 15 miles an hour backwards into a wall to self Heimlich and, and finally broke loose. I didn't see visions of my past. I saw visions of the future, which is a Detroit newspaper saying, nutrition doctor dies with pizza boxes around him. And I'm like, okay, this means I'm not dying. That's not the past.
Yeah.
That's the future. There's a future I don't want. And then, and after that, I really it
Oh,
was one of those, oh my God, that was too close. I've had a couple
right.
minor, if you will, moments like that since, but that has helped me realize I have to get a grip on this and take on this lifestyle of avoiding, for instance, I'm not a big fan of, for me, okay, I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting because when you fight against the biological drive to eat by some artificial window for people like myself and for many who I think are better off eat when hungry. By the way, learn when the early hunger signals are. I think many of us have suppressed them because we're
Mm.
stressed and we're doing this and that and the other thing until ghrelin and other hunger hormone levels are so high that we're disconnected. Our intellectual capacity is disconnected from our impulse, and we're like, "Why is this happening?" And it's going down the throat. Eat when hungry. Stop when comfortably full. Do that most of the time with the right blend of foods. With your 5% fun zone as the dose makes the poison one. So don't worry about that. That's side issue stuff. And you have a way to, I think, as long as you're willing to, I love counseling. For instance, right after this, I'm actually going to have a talk with one of my coaches. Since I had that PhD experience, I'm all about whatever level. It doesn't have to be PhD level coaching and counseling. I think, if someone's going to be referred to a cognitive behavioral therapist because they're having a bad streak hitting a baseball or golf ball, which is great. I mean, sports are important for
Yeah,
us. I realize that,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think our life is worth as much as a ball. So I,
That's a great point.
Mm.
so
That's a
go to
great
that
point.
counselor. It can help you
Yeah,
out. Learn stress
yeah.
management. It's not going to be perfect, whatever that is. I think progress is perfection, but that's, in a large way making it almost my life, which you don't expect others to do. But what I can say I did, and then however that helps somebody else, just know you're not alone. Definitely pull you out. I'm with you, brother. I'm right here. I'm telling you. I've been there, and I don't have any problems talking about it openly now. In fact, though it was hard, it's been freeing, and I can guarantee you it's happening left and right. And the
Yeah.
more we can free ourselves of the guilt, we have hot dog eating contests. I mean, we have sanctioned
Yeah.
binge eating going on
Yeah.
that makes it challenging. So be compassionate to self, forgive self. Forgive others too, by the way, for yourself, right? Holding on to
Right,
anger is
right,
like drinking poison and
right.
expecting the other person to
Yeah,
die, as Buddha would say,
right.
is the appropriate approach.
Wow. This really resonates with me as well. I mean, Poe knows like I have my own problems with binge eating, and what I'm hearing from you is there's this sort of need to balance your desire to be in control and not feel overly restricted with balancing your environment. And like that has sort of been key here. Like you just ate your wife's bag of cheese because why does that matter? There's a name on it. It doesn't matter. How, yeah, is that how you like nowadays? Like, do you still struggle with binge eating? And is it all about controlling your environment, or how are you?
I think that's a great question. A great question. It's multifactorial. Certainly environment, and that includes, bringing a food bag with me. Not that I exclusively eat out of the food bag, but if I'm hungry before I walk in to go somewhere, having an apple or anything to kind of tamp down so I can reconnect with my
Hunger.
intellectual
Yeah.
capacity and it's amazing how many people have learned like, wow, that's really simple. In fact, we call it something way too complicated in our course. We have to read. This is PG-13, right? Are we what level are we at here?
No,
Yeah.
we don't censor.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got to find a new name because what we call in our program, Flex 5 program, is just throw some healthy shit in the bag. It doesn't have to be complicated. Before you leave, put the bag on the kitchen island. So even if you're like, oh, I'm tired, like, oh, there it is. Open up and just throw some healthy shit in the bag. Take it with you. That's one way you can kind of bring a little bit of your environment with you. You're going to run on some errands. Bring with all due respect to Dr. Grundy, who thinks that grapes are sugar bombs. Throw some grapes in there or whatever. Just bring some snacks so you can have some, and then learn a little bit about where you can get regular healthier choices, and then don't worry about some slips or 5% fun zone. Slips, by the way, we use as an acronym for stop, look, investigate, plan, because nobody gets a black belt in
Mm,
lifestyle or certainly a black belt in mixed martial arts without getting beat up. And that's what the Flex 5 to us is, right? These skills and knowledge in psychology, nutrition, physical activity, environments, and accountability. And you're not going to get a black belt in overnight, or a PhD or overnight, or you're not going to come out of the womb and jump onto the balance beam in the Olympics and get a gold medal, right out of the womb. You got to slip off that balance beam. I don't know. I had some gold medalist needs to tell me how many times you fall off the balance beam before you got your gold medal. 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 times. I don't know, but it's a lot. And each one of those slips was perfect for that moment for them to learn how to tweak and adjust and become a gold medalist. So to me, it's all about progress is perfection. Not, progress, not perfection. Like, you're not good enough for perfection. Don't try to do that. And well, how about we redefine what perfection is? Because I think we're all perfect. But anyway, that's my perspective there. It's like being in
mm,
recovery, though. Yes, I don't know that anything, even like alcohol, that there's a recovered. I always say to people, I'm recovering,
Yeah.
because I can lapse. I think anybody can, but
sure.
it becomes a lot easier when you know your environment. You have positive psychology. You think about things in terms of our value, and that it's okay to take a calculated risk. So one of the differences in our program is we don't like sell the Mediterranean diet, or not. There's nothing wrong with it, by the way. But I'll tell you, when I'll give you an example why I ask people what's your why, and the other question was, what are your non-negotiables? Because this helps with binge eating as well. Because if you think you can't have something, you usually just go in a closet and have 10 times more, because you say, F you world, you say, I can't have it. And so I'll tell you, for a auto line worker to an auto executive, okay, and how this idea of providing agency to the patient or coaching client, to one of each in this case, and that you're just a navigator and a coach, a DOC, not a GOD. An answer from Swami Kotagiri, who gave me permission to talk about it. He is the CEO of Magna International. Magna International is the largest auto supplier in North America, one of the largest in the world. It's a Fortune 500, $40 billion company. And when I was hired on as the medical well-being director for Magna, and asked him, what is your non-negotiable? And I don't know if this was because he had some preconceived notion, because he knew I was Mediterranean background, but he said that, Tom, I don't want to hear about any Mediterranean diet bullshit. I'm Indian, and there's no reason you can't help me with healthy Indian food. And I'm like, what? Did I come in with a flag that said Mediterranean? What do you think, I'm selling Mediterranean or something like that? I mean,
Right, right,
hey
right, right.
man, it sounds like reverse discrimination here. But by the way, you have a chef, so don't worry about it, Swami. We'll take care of it. And it's great. It took him 4 years, and I just had lunch with him recently. I'd argue he's probably one of the healthiest executives in the Fortune 500. But then there's a line worker. Don't have his permission, so I'll just call him Larry. And we were in a meeting at Henry Ford when I was regional medical director for metabolic health and weight management there, and asking them, reviewing, like, what is it about the Flex 5 that worked for you, and what about it? And while some did say, wow, this whole concept of calorie density, I didn't know you could feel full on less calories, or most people pick something in our mind matters, or I don't want to call it psychology. I don't want to sound too clinical. So we call it mind matters. And it's a lot of times it's that non-negotiable concept that I come in and I say, what's your non-negotiables? I want to work with you. And Larry said, in his voice, it's that non-negotiable 5% fun zone thing, Doc. Oh, okay, Larry, what about it? And we're all sitting around. Well, I told you it was a Coney dog. I'm like, oh, okay, so he goes, well, you didn't beat me over the head with a stick about it. Larry, you just told me it was non-negotiable. Why would I start negotiating what you just said was non-negotiable? He said, yeah, but I haven't had one in 4 years because of that. Really? Okay, now everybody's leaning. Tell us more about this story. He goes, well, I remember you told me it was my choice, so I kept saying maybe next week, maybe next week, and kept feeling better, so maybe next week. Next thing I knew, it was 4 years later. And the whole crowd's like, oh, about three claps into it. And then you hear this almost, I wouldn't say violent, but a very assertive, not aggressive, very assertive, but. And he's looking right at me with his finger in the air. He goes, I can tell you right now, Doc, you told me I couldn't have had one. I would have had 10 the first week. My blood pressure would have been up. My weight wouldn't have been down. I would have lied to you about it and told you your diet sucks. And he's in my chest now, and I'm going, oh my God. But remember, it wasn't me. I was the one that didn't say that. I got enough of my own issues. I don't need to own your journey. I give you information. Do whatever you like. I'm going to sleep one way or the other because I have to for my own preservation. And so you realize how much just respecting other people as adults, and because I treat adults, I'm an internal medicine specialist, I'm not a pediatrician. It's your choice. Whatever you want to do, I'm just going to give you information. You told me what your why is. I'm going to give you information about this. It's up to you to reconcile the two and how you do it. All I can tell you is trust me, you got your 5% fun zone, but you're going to go through slips, and it's okay. It's totally fine. I'm not saying, yay, I slipped, woohoo, great. But you're going to get a black belt and think you're going to get out of the octagon without, well, I'm sorry, it's a UFC reference here, without a black eye. Not going to happen. So it's okay. Stop, look, investigate, plans. It didn't kill you. You can just stop and free yourself of that. Look at the situation objectively, no more black or white, okay? And then investigate where there's an opportunity in a similar future situation to then plan. On a confidence level on 1 to 10, around 7 or 8. You want to push yourself a little. You don't want it to be a 10, but don't come up with a lofty 2. I mean, let's not try to hit grand slams every time. And then rinse and repeat. Try that plan. May work, may not work, may work halfway. That's how you get your black belt, and that's okay. Just predetermine that is going to be the process, and you'll find this will be a lot easier. I don't have a magic wand. Now, through this process, have we found that people get faster initial results? Yes, because we individualize on what their pain point is, whether it's emotional eating or blood pressure or blood sugar or weight management. But we make clear, like, this is just Star Wars. This is not Empire Strikes Back. This is not Return of the Jedi. It's going to take time for it to really settle in. And then comes the accountability key. We need to continue to work with each other. We'll provide compassionate accountability. No, I met Jillian Michaels. I think she's a wonderful person, but this whole idea of whipping people on a treadmill and Biggest Loser until they vomit
Yeah.
is not the kind of
Right.
accountability I'm talking
Right.
about. I'm talking about a partnership where
Right.
someone, like, you're with a walking group. Oh, I want to make sure I get there because I know they're waiting for me.
Right.
I want
Right.
that
Yeah.
accountability. Someone that's going to be giving me truth and honesty, but with compassion, if you will, without judging me, and just willing to give me information because they're paying me. I mean, they're the boss. I'm not the boss. And some other things that we try to do to be sure that we don't that we're as realistic as possible. Some of the things we found is that I don't get me wrong. I don't think exercise is great. I love exercise. For me, it's kind of like a drug I need on top of NEAT, or non-exercise activity time, where we see there's a lot more evidence from blue zones. Who's exercising in Okinawa? Who's exercising in Sardinia? I was there. I saw goat herders and sheep shepherds. I didn't see a treadmill. I mean, I saw mountains. People are like walking up inclines. But they're doing
Right.
this spread throughout the day. So the idea of, like, look, just let's find ways to get in some non-exercise activity time, alternating sitting, standing, parking further at the grocery store. Oh, I can't take the stairs. It's 8 floors up. Well, there's an elevator. Why don't you just go up to the 7th floor and start with one floor? I mean, why does everything have to be all or nothing? Let's break things up into pieces. And people really appreciate that non-exercise activity time start. But we're honest. We're like, if you can do the resistance training probably before the aerobic, because you're getting leaner to maintain muscle mass. But if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. You know, and we always emphasize, how else do you define the 5% fun zone? It's however much you need of whatever to not want to kill me until the next time you come to this point. Because I don't want to die, and I don't want you to think that I've got some magic fix. Everyone will be individual. We had a patient who just would never resistance train. He had heart disease. He reversed it, but he loved biking. So biking was his thing. So biking is what we supported. Go for the bike, man. I'd love to get you in the gym and pump you up a little bit, but that's me. I'm not your boss.
Tom, I love that you meet people where they're at, and then how you said it, you redefine perfection as progress. And there's only progress and learning, you know? And I'm curious about the learning piece. You know, you said you don't want people to rely on willpower. I totally agree with that. And when people slip, which they inevitably do, as you said, there's a lot of learning there. What I often, with myself and also with my patients, I try and get them, like, okay, let's say you did binge again, like, connect with how crappy you felt and almost get disillusioned with the thing that you thought that you really like, you know? Like, it's like, if especially if you've been eating really healthy and then you go back to a cheeseburger or donuts or whatever, you feel kind of crappy. And I'm just curious, is that something you see? Is that
Oh yeah,
something you
oh yeah. And it depends. So you remember we have two categories, right? It's 5% fun zone. You pre-planned it, you portion controlled it, you enjoyed it for the wedding. You know, we always say it's cake on your on your birthday is not the issue. It's cake on everybody's birthday. Or is it a slip? If it's a slip, then we have to have that conversation. And I will say, listen, I'll be honest with you. Corporate food is trying to manipulate you, just so you know. I mean, if I think of it and I tell them, from my perspective, I don't want to be in their experiment. So if that helps you mentally, that you realize they are out there to manipulate you, and this is part of what happened, that can be a little tool to your point that you say you're identifying. They already know that they felt crappy. That part I don't have to remind them too much about. But I do remind them they're in a matrix and they're in a game, and somebody else is trying to take advantage of their, you know, hunter-gatherer tendency to do something that's not at all abnormal. The environment is what's abnormal. I've often, you know, thought like we wouldn't need, any of this psychology and other anything else if we were living on the island that Tom Hanks was for the movie Castaway. Everything would be fine. You'd you'd be hunting and gathering berries and vegetation, fish, and your counselor would be Wilson, and you'd be terribly unhappy. But we don't live there, and there's diamonds in rough here. And read Salt, Sugar, Fat. I've recommended Michael Moss's book. Now he's got another one, Hooked. I'm sure you've heard of both of them, and realize they are out there to manipulate you. If you think that they're not putting things at certain levels, that they've got advertisements. And by the way, if you go to Dubai, it's funny, they've got road advertisements. You see one for whatever fast food, this or that comfort food. There they'll have six in a row. It's almost like they've timed how long it'll take you to glance down, look back up, and it's like it's hitting you in the face as you're driving down the freeways
mm,
there.
That's
Uh,
great.
and
wow.
and everything from the checkout lanes, you're having to fight with your kids who want this, that, and the other thing. It does impact people to help them realize that it's very much a manipulated environment, and you don't want to be that gerbil in a cage. No disrespect to gerbils. That does help, but they know already that they're feeling pretty bad about a slip. Now, when they come back and they're like, and they're straightforward and they're honest that they've had my 5% fun zone and everything's looking good, because remember, their blood pressure still looks good, their lipids look good. I'm like, oh, you're starting to find
Yeah.
that balance, good for you.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of differentiate the two, the slip versus the zone.
Yeah. Maintenance. How can you get to that elusive maintenance phase where you're doing the right thing almost most of the time because that's the thing you want to do.
Yeah, that's where I'll reach into the National Weight Control Registry, and it could be for blood pressure or other cardiometabolic issues. Doesn't really matter. I have my issues of over focusing on weight. I've written an article called "Why Weight Loss Methods Don't Help with Self-Loathing." That was a title editor's choice, not mine. But 99% of adults in America don't meet, and certainly when you're going to 40 or 50 or above, don't meet the American Heart Association Simple Seven. So everybody needs help. Doesn't matter what your weight is. So let's kind of get away from hyper focusing on the scale. But with that being said, the maintenance part, National Weight Control Registry does show it takes at least 2 years of maintenance and up to five. Remember, I mentioned Swami, 4 years before the odds of long-term success greatly increase. So what I try to emphasize as a coach, and the accountability key, is that it's evidence-based for us to stick together for a while. I'd like to see you as often as you're willing to see me. If you look at the Look Ahead trial, they kept in touch with them every month. It could have been by phone, but they were, trying to take them through this journey, because it's not one habit. Five keys, Flex Five, whichever way you want to call it, is made up of multiples. Oh, it only takes, whatever, whatever weeks it is for change of habit. Yeah, but when you're talking about 30 habits, sometimes some people are ready. They're in action phase. I want all of them. I'm going to get my black. They're going to be like BJ Penn. What he get his black belt in 2 years. I mean, that's a prodigy. Then sometimes that happens, but more often than not, people need some pacing. So reminding them is this is the evidence. I can't tell you that it's going to be in 3 months. You might get great results in 3 months, but whether they'll stick, that's a story. Now we can get you quickly to metabolic health. That's a transformation phase. Could be 6 months, might be a year, somewhere in between that zone. And then there's transition phase, that's about 2 to 4 years, and then you've got maintenance. So in between this, you've got old behaviors that die hard, that turn into new behaviors. They're not yet habits, that need some time to go from congeal to crystallize to become oldish behaviors, right? Because they're kind of enough to become old that hopefully are oldish habits that will die hard, but they take time to cure. And that's where you got to convince them to follow you guys for a period of time that is science-based, evidence-based, and it's at least 2 years. If you're doing a full intensive program, it's probably less, but still, it's not months. Well, it's months, but it's in the 24-month category.
No, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think a lot of people, well, we live in a society where people want things now. They want things quickly, and they make a change and they're like, I'm good, or they make a change and just knowing that 2 to 4 year time frame, I think that makes a lot of sense, and in some ways it's relieving too, because people will often feel like a failure if they have a lapse or a relapse after 6 months or a year or even 2 years. They'll sort of say, I was good, what happened? So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
And it'll still happen. They'll have, for instance, another thing we prepare people for is even in the best of cases, even with surgery, doesn't matter, bariatric surgery, or if we're just going to kind of stick with a model, it could be blood pressure too, where someone's really intensively in action phase, right? And then eventually that burns out, but hopefully you'll leverage the legacy potential of that action phase by having so many things change in such a significant way that a lot of it sticks, right? But most people will hit a nadir of blood pressure, insulin, triglycerides, weight, whatever, and then bounce up a little bit and then plateau. And there are a lot of people who are not prepared for that. Bariatric surgery as well, almost none go like this and then they're flat. They'll go like this and they'll bounce up. And if they're not prepared, what you find is, oh, this guilt, oh, it's not working, heck with it. It's like, no, that's normal. That happens. As a matter of fact, if you've got a weight goal, I might say you're so driven, let's say it's 195. Try to get to 190, because it's going to bounce up a little bit, and that's just, we're guessing. We'll see what'll happen, but at least it's preparing people for that. That's normal. Where it's, in fact, as you start to get towards maintenance, it kind of becomes like stock market in reverse. It may be in the beginning it's straight line down because there's a lot of room to improve, or whatever you want to call it, and then it's kind of like stock market in reverse, and then your plateau is not a straight line. It's still a little bouncy, and sometimes you'll have a relapse, and you can always say, don't worry, you just come back in and we could do a little boost. Maybe it's 6 weeks, maybe it's 3 months. There's a lot of skills you have, and one of the nice things about the Flex 5 is we have, for people closer to maintenance, a different approach called slide. So there's slip and slide. In the beginning, things are pretty clear. It's like it's a slip, it's obvious what happened. When people are in maintenance, what'll happen is they'll have a creep, whether it's blood pressure, the sugar, weight, and they're like, I can't really figure it out. Like, there's nothing clearly off, obviously off, because it's a conglomerate of multiple things in 5 keys. So you say, okay, stop for a second and think about this. It's not something obvious. You're not a beginner anymore. Let's go into the 5 keys and start to think when you were a year ago, year and a half ago, wherever it was that you thought that things were going better. And let's just do a comparison. What was happening? Oh yeah, I was tracking my food. We don't believe in tracking food forever because it's so burdensome. It's just, but
Yeah.
you maybe a little bit of that to kind of redirect, or maybe I'm start tracking food, or I'm only doing 6 hours of sleep because of my new job instead of 8. And you start to find out it's actually 3 things. No one of them threw them off, but when they put these 3 things together, you triage with the Flex 5. Is it in psychology, nutrition, physical activity, environments, or accountability? And when you're out that far, 2, 3, 4 years, people don't usually slip. It's like sometimes, but usually a slide. It stands for slight loss in
Yeah.
direction or energy in multiple different
Wow.
keys. So that's kind of the way we've
Wow.
accommodated the difference between those, because you got to accommodate your martial arts school. You got Sometimes you'll put them all in the calisthenics phase, the white belts and the black belts. But when they're sparring, you're not going to put a white black belt against a black belt. Uh, Although that happened to me once, I will say. When I was in Ishinru, I hired my sensei who never wanted to work in the summertime, and I begged him and pleaded him like a whiny brat until he finally did. And then he trained me alone for the entire summer. When it came to belt testing, I'm like, hey, sensei, can I skip yellow belt and like just go right to blue? Because there was yellow and yellow, red stripe, and then blue, and I had enough
Right.
to go to blue belt. He goes, oh, you think so, huh? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I think so, sensei. Okay. So we get to the sparring part, and he's matching, this blue belt with that brown belt and this one with that belt. And I'm like, okay, sensei, I'm ready. Who am I going to spar? He goes, oh, you're sparring me. I'm like, oh no, we got to be kidding me. Then he proceeded to beat the crap out of me. Anyway, so what can you say?
No, I was just
Oh,
gonna ask because you were talking about bariatric surgery, and I'm actually like I think 9 weeks post-op, and I
Oh,
was
okay.
just gonna ask you about yeah. I mean, I know you work with certain clients, but what kind of what kind of advice would you give me? I mean, I was about 370 last year, 350 at surgery day, and then I'm down to like 310 right now. And man, the amount of energy, like I'm consistent, like I'm doing a lot of cycling. I had a knee injury, so my resistance training as far as lower body has kind of been limited. I've been working on strengthening it, but man, my energy levels is through the roof. And for me, it's been a good experience. Like I don't regret it. And I did it, you were talking about your family being your why. And like I was diabetic, high blood pressure, all that. And I was like, for me, I was like, man, I need to make a decision now early so that I don't, spend the rest of my life dealing with these conditions. But yeah, like I was just talking to you, like I noticed that does kind of stall a little bit, but part of the advice that the team was talking to me about was just kind of like, just got to keep doing what you're doing. It's so early. It takes over like a year before you start getting your body starts to heal and kind of operate like, at a normal level. But I was just thinking of what you're talking about. Like, what kind of advice could you give someone that's, like I said, in my situation?
Sorry about that. And I want to make sure that we don't lose power. So I think you're doing fantastic, Poe. You don't, I'm not sure if it was sleeve or if it was bypass, doesn't matter either way. You are you're gaining the benefits of, I think, one of the most impressive tools we have in modern science to not replace, but to kickstart lifestyle change. Worry about your metabolic health more than weight. If you're going to want to ask me like, hey, what's the best way for me to decide if I'm at my weight goal? Because forget BMI. Okay, just take it and throw it in the trash. I suggest fasting insulin that is at, level in the single digits. If you get a level of fasting insulin, for instance, that's at and by now I'll bet, I don't know if you need any blood sugar medications anymore. You probably don't, or if you do, a
No,
lot less.
I don't. Yeah,
Yes.
no,
So
I'm not
if
taking
someone
any
were to
of them. Yeah.
Exactly. So if someone's asked me, okay, how far should I go, or should I be, worried about, again, take the BMI and just toss it. If somebody has a fasting insulin of 5 or less with a fasting blood sugar in the double digits, in other words, normal blood sugar, say it's 94, 88, whatever, anything, something in double digits, combined with a fasting insulin, and forget about normal. Remember, we're talking about optimal. Normal, optimal, not the same. You might say normal on the lab that you might get back is less than 14. Again, toss that out. That's because it's a reference range of a US population in which there's a lot of insulin resistance. What's optimal is likely less than 5 or less than 5. So if you had a fasting insulin of 4 with a fasting blood sugar of 88, if you ask me, I'd be saying, pretty much whatever your weight body composition is there is great. Now, if you want to lose more for aesthetic purposes or because maybe your knee hurts and the orthopedist says that they want, that's different. Metabolically, what more insulin resistance are you going to get rid of? Your body's super sensitive. It can control blood sugar with just a bink of insulin, which is great. You want that, as opposed to a blood sugar of 88 and your insulin is 12 or 14 or 24. I would say your blood sugar is normal, but your pancreas is really working hard to do that. Let's keep going, getting leaner until we get to that level. But you might be surprised how much earlier you get to that optimal fasting insulin than you may think if you use a BMI. The BMI is worthless at this point. Of course, you're going to get leaner. Of course, you're going to get lighter. But it's forget about less than 25. If any doctor tells you that, just say, just look at doing things. Say, wouldn't insulin sensitivity or body composition, which you can actually get a DEXA and look at visceral fat. But why even do that? You're looking for insulin resistance. Check the fasting insulin level. If your blood pressure is under 120 over 80 resting, your heart rate is less than 80, let alone maybe even less than 70, and you've got a fasting insulin of 5 or less with a fasting blood sugar in the double digits, after that, I'm just wear your safety belt. Don't text while driving. Don't jump out of a plane without a parachute. Don't do the other things that
Yeah.
people can shorten their
Yeah.
lives with that hasn't outside of the realm of metabolic health. Because we have seen people feel so good and they do some crazy things. And okay, if you want to ride around without a helmet on your motorcycle, it's up to you. But I can't. Your fasting insulin of 3 is not going to help you with any accidents from there. So I think you're going to do great. Obviously, it sounds like you're already being physically active. I'm sure you've got a dietitian that's helping out, and over time you will notice that the portion control part starts to become not quite as robust, which is fine. And what we try to emphasize that after a year, certainly 2, most people after bariatric surgery are eating pretty normal. I mean, not necessarily the larger amount, but larger than they thought. So things like calorie density, where in the beginning we might say, hey, listen, you can get in so few calories. We actually want more, peanut butter or whatever it is, just get in enough calories. But over time, realize that you'll be able to accommodate more, kind of shift more to the concept of, how many calories per bite of food. There's, 100 calories or less in broccoli, and there's 4,000 calories in clarified butter and oil, and people will still eat basically the same weight of food per day. Now it's adjusted after bariatric surgery, but whatever that amount settles at, let's say it's a pound and a half, you can have dramatically different amounts of calories in a pound and a half of certain mix of foods versus a pound and a half of others. In the beginning, you might only be able to fit in 3/4 of a pound of food, but over time it might double. Not back to average man eats about 4 pounds, and probably would be maybe half of that after bariatric surgery and it settles. But it's no longer 3/4 of a pound; it's more like 2 pounds, and that's okay over a day. And as you start to realize that, remember, your fruits and vegetables, things you might not be able to do right after surgery, right? You're not going to be,
Yeah.
eating
Yeah.
a big piece of fruit, right? But two
Right.
years from now, you know, it'll all come back. So just make sure the dietitians realize you're on a journey that eventually you're going to be eating pretty normal, normal, and portions control will be there, but it won't be like it was 3 months after the surgery, 1.5 years or 2 years after the surgery. As you start to use your skill powers in food and calorie density, you'll do great. You'll rock it. Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you, man. Yeah. It's
thank
been a
you.
great journey so far. I don't have any regrets, to be quite honest. I'm glad I did it. But yeah, and I do look at it like as a journey, like just learning what I can and can't eat right now. Like, yeah, there's been times when I'm like, oh man, that doesn't feel right. I'm just way more grateful that I did it than I am like, and most people, I mean, I feel like I chose to do it at a perfect time in my life. I don't feel like, oh, I wish I would have done it earlier. I've heard that people say that, but not really. Like for me, it just made sense after I got some injuries that kind of limited how much I was my mobility, and ever since the surgery I've lost so much weight that it's like I don't feel as swollen, I don't feel the achiness as much, you know what I mean, like, so it's just definitely been better. So
That's great. And they're
yeah.
they're monitoring your nutrition and making sure you're getting the right
Yeah.
vitamins, minerals.
Yeah.
You're
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
You're great, man. I'm proud of you. That's cool.
Thank you.
All right,
So,
Tom. Well, we have time, I think, for our final question, which we ask everybody who comes to the Health Feast, which is if you were attending our proverbial Health Feast and bringing your mindset tip or life philosophy, what is Dr. Rifai bringing to the Health Feast?
mhm. Love yourself. Really feel and understand how powerful the magic of life is. Every day is a gift, and
Mm.
the most important love of all. I hate to bring Whitney Houston into this, but is yourself. And once you have that, I think you can go from there. It is really important to have a level of self-respect, because people are sometimes, I don't want to say they're intentionally sabotaging you in your life, but some people are just food is love and everything else. But you sometimes have to be assertive, not aggressive, but not passive either, and that comes through self-love. And you love others in the process. You'll find a way to say things, no thank you or whatever the case may be, that will meet both the respect for them and, most importantly, the respect for yourself. So do love yourself first and foremost. We're all on a journey, and remember, progress is perfection.
Oh, thank you
Thank
for
you very
that.
much,
That's
doctor.
beautiful. And we'll put your links. People want to work with you. We'll put your links in our show notes. And Tom, I want to just thank you so much for making the time to be here with us today. We'll do our fist bump to the camera.
All right. Yeah.
Nice.
My pleasure.
Boom.
My pleasure. More than my pleasure. Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for
Well,
having me.
take
Tom.
care.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you back here next time. Live well and rock on. And